Subquest Light of Hope 5. Bahano cleared. You will receive the subquest reward. Subquest updated. Subquest Light of Hope 6. Capital Bahano description. You have arrived at the kingdom of Bahano within the time limit. Now it's time to check out the situation in the capital of Bahano. Objective. Investigate what is happening in Bahano, the capital of the kingdom of Bahano. This quest is a linked quest. Success. Next quest clue failure. Final reward. Do you accept? Yes/no. Thanks to the carriage that ran hard for 3 days, we were able to reach the outskirts of Bahano quickly. I pressed the accept button for the quest and looked out the window. How beautiful! The trees in Bahano were colorful. As I admired the pretty autumn leaves, the carriage sped towards the capital of the kingdom of Bahano. Meanwhile, I had been knitting diligently with the knitting supplies I received from Zane. But the result was as expected. You see, I told you not to do it so sloppily like you, master. I did just as you told me. Why is it like this? I didn't know what the difference was between Zane and me, but I got scolded by Zane again. Oh dear, what a waste of yarn. How do you keep making rags? That's a skill too. Zane kept nagging at me as he looked at my finished product, as if he was venting all the stress he had received from me so far. And Troy, surprisingly, was much better at knitting than me. How's mine, Zane? Oh, not bad for a beginner. He was good enough to impress Zane. Unlike me, who had no learning skills, Troy copied the skills that Zane taught him very well, so Zane taught him more diligently. Thanks to that, Troy quickly made a decent scarf, and my existence soon faded away, even though we were in the same space. But still, I was glad that we arrived at Bahano without any major problems. I took in the sight of Bahano Castle in the distance. The castle, which looked like a white palace, was quite huge. The carriage stopped at Bahano where the castle was visible. Thank you very much. I paid the coachman generously and got off. The two who had been knitting until just before seemed reluctant to leave, but it was time to move. I went into a nearby inn with them. It was a bit pricey, but it was close to Bahano Castle. This is your room. As soon as I entered the room that the innkeeper guided me to, I unpacked my luggage briefly and headed to the window. It doesn't feel like a capital. Zane came next to me and looked out the window with me. He was right. The atmosphere of Bahano was not very good. Even though it was a capital, it looks like corpses walking around. Just looking at the people passing by outside, they all had no energy and drooped shoulders. Some had blue spots all over their bodies, making them look like they were in Roval for the first time. That's right, the capital is already addicted too. We already knew it since we had been looking out the window since we arrived at Bahano. Most of the cities in Bahano Kingdom were in this state. There were an absurd number of people addicted to happy. According to Usher's law, the current king of Bahano would also be seriously addicted to happy, so how much more would his people be? But it's lucky that we arrived earlier than expected. There was still time left before a large-scale monsterization occurred. About 10 days. My goal was to finish everything within that time. Today, the first day we arrived at Bahano, I planned to rest. There was still plenty of time left, and the quest content was nothing but information gathering. Come on out, it's not good when it gets cold. I know, stop nagging. So we decided to eat at the restaurant on the first floor of the inn. Eating soup, salad, sausage, and beer felt like heaven. If only every day was like this. Unfortunately, time was not on my side. It looks delicious. I want to go out and eat too. Kairos whined as he bit into a sausage. Even though he didn't need any food intake as a new god, I'll be in trouble if you pop out now. Well, I'm just saying, at least that beer. You don't need anything anyway, Kairos. Don't you feel any taste? Next time, okay. As I was coaxing and soothing Kairos, Troy, who was sitting across from me, came into my sight. Troy devoured the food as if he had been starving for days. Oh, that guy, he must have been hungry for a long time. He didn't get proper treatment in Aldone. I should have taken better care of him before we came to Bahano. Of course, we ate some jerky and simple bread on the way, but that must not have been enough. I ordered a few more dishes for Troy. I had more than enough money anyway. It's better than I expected. Zane seemed satisfied too, which made me happy. Clang. The sound of the inn-door opening was heard. Normally, I wouldn't care about that side, but by chance, I was sitting in the direction where I could see the entrance. That is, the person who came in could see me too. And I almost dropped the sausage I was eating. The person who entered the inn was a very tall figure wearing a robe. Even though he was wearing a hood, I recognized who he was. His stature was very familiar to my eyes. He was much taller than ordinary people, with broad shoulders and muscular thighs. Why is he here? I quickly turned my eyes away, but he seemed to have noticed me too as I felt his gaze. Thud, thud. His footsteps sounded louder than usual in the noisy restaurant. Please, I hope he doesn't recognize me, or at least pretend he didn't. I wished for that, but the world was not on my side. I didn't expect to see you here. His low and heavy voice pierced my ears clearly despite the noise around us. Damn. I swallowed a curse and lifted my head. There he was, standing next to me and looking down at me. Why do I have to meet him here again? How come there are so many coincidences? Of course, I knew that there was a Diego Church apostle in Bahano Kingdom as it was in the original work. But of all places in this vast capital, I had to run into him at the inn where I was staying. Damn. I forced a smile, but still, maybe it's not so bad. If it was another apostle, I don't know, but since it's Tertius. I tried to think positively and took a sip of beer. That's right, but why is he standing still? Tertius looked around and then turned his eyes to me. It seems like there's no seat left. Do you mind if I join you? Oh, come on, there must be one somewhere. I looked around with that hope, but it was really crowded with customers. There weren't that many tables in the first place. Damn it. I wanted to kick him out, but my conscience pricked me a little. It was because I had left Tertius unconscious in his cave and left. And just then Zane, who recognized him, greeted him without any tact. Oh, nice to see you again. I'm glad you look fine. If you can't find a seat, you can sit here. He said that with a businesslike smile, and I felt a surge of anger, but I couldn't vent it because Tertius sat next to me. Yeah, thanks to whom? Tertius said that and glanced at me. There was no malice in his eyes, but somehow his words had thorns. It stung. Master, do you know him? Then Troy, who had buried his face in the plate and was engrossed in eating, asked me. There was salad sauce on his mouth. I handed him a napkin and answered, just a little. It was very awkward to say how I knew him. I didn't reveal who he was in his cave either, so how could I say that he was a Diego Church priest here? Fortunately, Tertius didn't bother to explain his identity either. My throat is dry. I gulped down the beer. Actually, I had been drinking ever since Tertius appeared, but I didn't feel any buzz. Meanwhile, the food and beer that Tertius ordered came out soon. He ate without saying much. What is it? Did he not come looking for me? Did he just stop by for a meal and ran into me? That would be a relief. My child, he seems quite friendly to you. That's fortunate. Is that so? Yes, he's behaving well now. If he wanted to harm you, he would have done it already. I groaned and got up from my seat. It was hard to sit at the same table with Tertius. Excuse me. I told Zane and Troy that I would go to the bathroom and got up. The dining table that had been comfortable until then became bleak as soon as Tertius appeared. So I pretended to go to the bathroom and headed to my room. I'll just stay here until he leaves, I thought as I entered my room. Leviathan. He followed me without me noticing and entered the room naturally. No, why did you follow me here, and when did you follow me? Since you got up from your seat, didn't you notice? I didn't notice. Was I that dull? No. It was all because the inn was complicated inside. Anyway, do you have something to say to me? I tried to change the subject and saw his lips curl slightly. Did he come here to tease me? No way, that's not it. Tertius had one reason to look for me. I came here to deal with the Rises Church in Bahano, and I want some help from you in the process. That meant he wanted my help in breaking through Mazine's blessing. I had done it before in Roble. Sorry, but I can't do that. We're here only for missionary work. Now that I knew that the Diego Church apostle in Bahano was Tertius, he wouldn't harm me, so it wouldn't be too dangerous. So I used missionary work as an excuse. Is that so? Oh, maybe he'll back off easily. He accepted it calmly, which was unexpected. Then leave Bahano as soon as possible. What? Why? Because you might get involved. What is he trying to do? At that moment, one setting flashed through my mind. Could it be? No way. What flashed through my mind was a memory of the combat technique that the Diego Church often used against the major religions. The Diego Church had a unique way of breaking through the protection of the gods: sacrifice. It sounded like a noble word at first glance, but it required the sacrifice of people, literally using them as shields. If they pushed several people into the protection, a gap would open for a moment, and they would enter through that gap. That's not faith. That's just meat shields. It was a cruel and brutal act, but they used it without any hesitation. Diego was originally an evil god, and the Diego Church that served him sometimes used it too. The ultimate goal of the evil god was to dominate humanity, so he didn't easily kill them. But he didn't hesitate to use them for his needs, which made him feel even more vicious. But Tertius wouldn't do such a thing voluntarily, given his personality. Of course, it was possible that his settings had changed since this world was a hidden route. Well then, while I was lost in thought, Tertius left without a word and disappeared. The open window rattled in the wind. No way, it can't be. After Tertius left, I resumed my meal. I told Zane and Troy that Tertius had some urgent business and left, and we finished our meal comfortably. After that, we returned to our lodging and took a rest. Before long, Zane and Troy fell asleep. There were 3 single beds in the room we were staying in, so we could sleep comfortably. But I couldn't sleep at all. It was partly because of the snoring of the 2, but mostly because of Tertius. Where are you going, my child? I'm going for a walk for a bit. Really? Okay. I'll look around the temple. Yes, you do that. I answered Kairos briefly and put on a robe. I pulled the hood over my head and carefully left the lodging and went outside. I walked slowly and looked around. It was time to think about the quest. Investigate what's happening in Bahano. What exactly did that mean? It was a quest that wasn't in the original work, so it felt difficult. But my intuition, honed by many experiences of the Wusabiup, told me if I wanted to get a hint, I had to listen to rumors or recognize the situation that was happening somewhere. I looked around first. There were people lying around everywhere, addicted to happy. There were also people who walked like zombies. It's brutal. I saw the same scene as I did in Roval for the first time in a long time. It's also unpleasant. I felt like I was the only survivor of a zombie apocalypse. At least the zombies didn't attack me, which was a relief. As I scanned their faces and walked, I soon entered a dark place. It wasn't as narrow as an alley, but it was dark because the moonlight didn't shine well. Thud. Someone suddenly appeared. It was as if he fell from the sky, literally appearing in front of me in an instant. Could it be Troy? I thought and looked up, and I opened my eyes wide. The purple hair fluttering in the night wind, the beautiful appearance that stood out even in the darkness, and the body of a Banra. Damn, it was Khalid. Is this why Tertius told me to leave Bahano? Damn. While I was cursing in my mind, Khalid took a step toward me. Where did that nice smell come from? It's you, Leviathan. Khalid smiled and approached me. His appearance made me shiver for a moment and my body stiffened. It was true that people couldn't scream or move when they were too scared, but I had to calm down. I stared at Khalid and quickly racked my brain. There were 2 apostles of the Diego Church looking for Bahano in the original work. Of course, there could be more since this was a hidden route. But for now, the apostles of the Diego Church in Bahano were Tertius and Khalid. The good thing was, if Khalid was here, it meant that Tertius was nearby too. Or not. He should be. Judging by the fact that I ran into him at the inn during the day, Tertius must be around. So I just had to hold on until he found me. Khalid probably wouldn't kill me easily. Hello, Leviathan. Khalid smiled with a clear eye that showed no sign of what he was thinking, and he raised his hand to greet me. I reluctantly lifted the corners of my mouth and greeted him back. Yes, hello. Khalid quickly came closer. He took off the hood I was wearing and reached out his hand. His hand grabbed my chin and lifted it. I looked straight into Khalid's eyes. You're still pretty. It was a compliment that others would be happy to hear, but my feelings were just one. Scary, damn. I couldn't show any signs of wavering. I pretended to be calm and said, "Thank you for the compliment. I hated this guy. I hated him so much, but I didn't show it on the outside. Especially when I thought of what happened in the cartel forest last time. I wanted to swing a mace at Khalid, but my life was precious. I had to endure, yes. But what are you doing here? I never thought I'd see you in Bahano." Khalid smiled sweetly and let go of my face. The place where he had held me briefly felt numb. As I rubbed my chin, he spoke again. "Did you come here for the Kairos Church's business?" I hated Khalid. "I just came to visit as a missionary," I answered flatly, but Khalid clapped his hands and was delighted. Where did the applause come from? "Really, is that so? I'm quite lucky to see you here." He smiled prettily as if he could charm anyone, male or female, but I was immune. Kairos was much more beautiful. That's when it happened. A whip appeared in his hand. Oh no, don't tell me. I quickly backed away, but Khalid was faster. Whip snap. The whip danced in Khalid's hand, and in a blink of an eye, he grabbed my right wrist. Arg, a sharp pain shot through my wrist. Where do you think you're going? What are you doing? I bit my lip. I'm taking you to my mansion, of course. Suddenly, the moonlight illuminated Khalid's face. His eyes glowed with madness. This pervert. I tried to call the kids right away, but clang. A sword energy flew from somewhere and cut off the whip that bound my hand. At the same time, a strong wind brushed past my ear. Arg! Khalid let out a pained groan. Tertius, who had appeared out of nowhere, was holding Khalid's whip-wielding hand tightly. If you're going to come faster. But thanks to Tertius, I preserved my life. I glanced at the two of them and then looked at my wrist. I wondered if it was bleeding from the pain, but fortunately it was only bruised. What are you doing, fifth apostle? Even as I thought that, Tertius didn't let go of Khalid's wrist. What about you? What are you doing? Khalid's brow furrowed, but Tertius' eyes were also fierce. Don't touch him. What? The moment you touch him, it won't end with this. Tertius' sword was pointed at Khalid's throat, since who knows when, he's stronger than I thought. Khalid was not weak either, but Tertius from the hidden route was no less than him. I hadn't noticed it much until then. Fine. Khalid looked at me with a dumbfounded expression. Then his lips twisted into a smirk. Well, there will be another chance. Clack! Khalid quickly shook off Tertius' hand, and he disappeared into the darkness in an instant. As I was looking at the spot where Khalid had vanished, Tertius came to my side. Leviathan, are you okay? Yes, well, he saved me. Tertius, he must have remembered the oath he made with me. I almost got into big trouble. Thank you. No. Tertius stared at my wrist and took something out of his pocket, and he handed it to me. It was a flute smaller than his palm. Why was he giving me this? If you need me in this city, blow this. I'll help you once. No, why? But Tertius didn't answer me and disappeared. In my hand, only the flute that Tertius gave me remained. Thanks for saving me, but why did he help me? I didn't understand, but I kept the flute anyway on top of a tall building. Tertius was standing there. He was watching Leviathan's back as he walked back to his lodging after standing on the street for a while. Why did I? He wondered in his head. A while ago, giving the flute to Leviathan was something that even Tertius himself didn't understand. In fact, even going into the inn during the day was like someone was telling him to go in, and he moved his feet as if he was bewitched. Did he somehow pull me in? He met Leviathan there, and then he felt like the fog that filled his head clear up a bit. And it was the same now. Even though he only stayed by Leviathan's side for a moment, his head felt clearer. It was obvious that it was because of that. He didn't save him because of the oath he made with Leviathan, but because he felt a strange urge to save him. It's weird, but he couldn't resist that urge. That mysterious feeling was like a sense that was inherent in his instinct. The next day, I woke up from my sleep in the late afternoon. I had spent a lot of energy on the walk I took last night because I couldn't sleep. But I didn't bother to explain what happened last night to Zane and Troy. I just told Zane to be careful because I thought I saw the guy I met in the cartel forest last time. I also told Troy to watch out for some crazy guy. And so, when the night was deep, I left the lodging with Troy and Zane. I'll never wander around alone at night again. I learned that for sure from last night. We're heading to the Rise's church, right? Yeah. Kairos told us where the capital branch of the Rise's church is. It was information that I already knew, but it was also information that Kairos imparted to me through prayer. We headed straight there. The original infiltration route of the Rise's church was from the countryside, where the influence of the government and the Diego church was the weakest. They always prioritized infiltrating the villages that were the hardest for the state or the Diego church to notice when they expanded their power. But Bajano was different. The Rise's church had already occupied the kingdom, so their branch was in the capital. I wonder if the Diego church knows that. It doesn't matter if they didn't catch on. I don't need to worry about that. Anyway, we headed to a place a few blocks away from our lodging. There was a passage in the basement of a building that was a fruit shop during the day which led to the Rise's church's chapel. From now on, keep your mind sharp. As we were walking, I heard Zane talking to Troy. Don't let your eyes wander to useless places. It could endanger us all. I know, don't worry. Just do your job. Zane, geez, look at this guy. Somehow, the two of them seemed to get along, but then they went back to their usual selves. I ignored their conversation and looked around. Without stopping, we soon arrived near the building where the Rise's church's branch was. But at that moment, I felt a strange sensation. It's gone. And that sensation told me a very simple but important fact. There was no divine protection here. I could feel the sinister energy of the divine, but not the energy of the divine protection. There's no possibility that they hid it well. There's no way they could hide such a strong energy. It was a disaster. The plot had changed again from the original. The hidden route had changed here. Sub-quest Light of Hope 6, capital Bajano clear. Sub-quest reward will be given. Sub-quest update. Sub-quest Light of Hope 7. Secret of Bajano Castle content. You have learned the situation of the capital Bajano. Now it's time to check the secret of Bajano Castle. Objective. Find out the hidden secret of Bajano Castle. This quest is a linked quest. Success. Next quest clue failure. Final success reward. Do you accept? Yes/no. As soon as I realized the situation, a system window appeared. As I read it through, I could understand what the system wanted to tell me. It was like a navigation that reset the information that had changed from what I knew in real time. As expected, this system. It seems to be tailored to me. But the important thing was not the system. It was the objective of the quest, the hidden secret of Bajano Castle. As I saw it, one hypothesis came to mind. Yeah, this is the most likely. The high priest of the Rise's church's Bajano branch had the king of Bajano in his hand. So the most likely place where the high priest, who was not in the chapel, had gone to was Bajano Castle. And the reason why there was no divine protection in the chapel. Oh damn, I forgot about that. The high priest of Bajano was different from the high priest's other branches. He also carried the divine protection with him. He was a man who valued his life terribly. Then the divine protection would be in the castle with the high priest. Damn hidden route. In the end, I had to change my destination. If they were going to adjust it anyway, they should have told me sooner. We're going to the castle. Huh. The castle all of a sudden. Zane asked me with a surprised look at my somewhat abrupt words. "What are you going to do there?" "This is the place where Lord Kairos told us the Rise's church's branches, but I can't feel the divine protection." "I see. The whole Bahano was covered with the divine's energy, so I was late to notice." "You're right, my child. Kairos was in a spiritual state, so he couldn't help but be late to notice." "Really?" "This is my guess, but there might be something going on in the castle. On the way here, I saw the state of the Bahano people, and there were many people who were seriously addicted to happy even in the capital where the castle is." As I continued, Zane and Troy's expressions became serious. I took a breath and added, "That means there's a high possibility that the royal family is not functioning properly. In other words, the royal family might have been eaten up by the Rise's church already." As soon as I finished, a light appeared in the air and Kairos materialized. The little puppy looked straight at the castle. "That's right, that's right." Sniff, sniff, Kairos sniffed the smell from the castle, and Zane and Troy were surprised. Troy was about to kneel, but Zane stopped him. "There's a very malicious smell coming from there, but my children, you have to be careful. It's much more poisonous than any smell I've smelled before." Kairos looked at me with worried eyes. I stroked his soft fur and answered, "Yes, don't worry, Lord Kairos. We're not going to do anything to the Rise's church right now. We're just going to investigate." Zane looked at me with a suspicious eye, but my words were sincere. This matter could cost us our lives if we moved rashly. We headed straight to the castle. The way to Bahano Castle was not very difficult. It was late, so there were few people, and we were able to reach the vicinity of the castle without being noticed by anyone. The problem was, the security is quite tight. The entrance of the castle was guarded by several heavily armed guards. Zane, Troy, and I hid in the bushes near the castle and watched the situation. Kairos had returned to his spiritual state, saying he didn't want to be a bother. "The security is strict, it looks hard to break through." "Yes, that's why I'm worried. And I can feel the divine protection here, so it was." My guess was exactly right. The objective of the quest pointed to the castle for this reason. What do we do? Let's watch a little more. Today we're just here to look around, so we have to avoid leaving any traces as much as possible. I examined the situation. There were 20 guards in total. More than 5 of them were wandering around the entrance. We would definitely get caught if we went in from the front. I had some drugs that I could use, but that would make the security stronger later. As I was pondering for a new solution, I saw an old spire in the distance that looked like it could collapse at any moment. Wait, that tower must be. I remembered a method I used when I played Wusabiup, a game. It was a secret path I accidentally discovered after playing the game several times, a way to sneak into Bahano's royal castle. It was heading towards the west tower that was separated from the castle. This is where being a veteran pays off. The quest's objective also pointed to this direction, so the task became easier. Fortunately, the West Tower area was also the weakest in terms of Mazine's protection, so even if we infiltrated, Mazine's children inside would not notice us. "Let's go to that tower over there." That old tower. When I pointed to the tower with my hand, Zane asked me. I nodded and said softly, "Yes, The plan is to cross over the wall of that place. The West Tower area has the weakest Mazine's protection. The protection's range was quite wide, but it was still limited. If we could solve the problem by breaking through Mazine's protection as before, we could enter from the front, but today's goal was not that. So we won't leave much trace even if we infiltrate. After that, we'll check the patrol routes of the castle guards from the spire and decide whether to go further or not. Yes, my child, be careful as much as possible. I don't know who they are, but they are very powerful beings. Yes, Kairos. I relayed Kairos's words to Zane and Troy. I understand. I will follow the leader's words. Thankfully, they answered sensibly, and we started to move cautiously. We avoided the guards' eyes and used the bushes behind us to move carefully. After a few minutes, we stood in front of the wall closest to the West Tower. This place was quite far from the main gate, and it was dark, so the guards would not spot us easily. I first took out a potion from my inventory and handed it to Troy. Drink, Troy. You still need to drink this to break through Mazine's protection. Unlike me and Zane, Troy still had no divine power, so this was a necessary step. I got it. Troy drank the potion without a word. After confirming that he emptied it, I thought for a moment. The remaining problem was how to climb this wall. It's much higher than I thought from the game. The Wall of Rises bridge that I had crossed so far was much lower than the castle's. But the castle's wall was at least twice as high as Rises bridges. That meant no ordinary person could cross it with their strength. Is there no good way? As I thought, I caught Troy's eye. Oh, right. Leader, do we have to cross over here? If so, I'll help. There was a Black Panther beastman. I had forgotten about that for a moment. Meanwhile, Troy, who had a clear pride in his eyes, said to me, I'll take the leader inside. I'm enough. Thanks, Troy. I'm glad you're here. No, but Zane, are you coming with us? At Troy's question, Zane was a bit surprised. I'll take that as a yes. Zane didn't give a clear answer, but Troy didn't bother to add more. And then I witnessed an amazing sight. Troy's body grew longer and soon black fur sprouted. Wow! As Zane let out an exclamation unknowingly, Troy transformed into a Black Panther in an instant. I couldn't close my mouth at the sight of the Black Panther with a yellow glow in his eyes, whose size was twice as big as a human. Wow! I was glad there was no one around. Troy, you're so big. I didn't know you were this big from Wusabiup since there was no cutscene or anything. Leader, get on. At Troy's words, I came to my senses. Then I saw Zane's face in my sight. He looked as surprised as I was. Leader. Yeah. Troy gestured to his back with his head. I immediately approached Troy and grabbed his fur. It was soft. No, this is not the time. Wait, Troy, do you feel any presence inside? Troy sniffed, moving his nose hard. There's no guard around here or beyond the wall. As expected, there was hardly any guard around the West Tower in Wusabiup. That's a relief. Get on, leader. I couldn't resist Troy's urging and moved quickly. As I grabbed Troy's back and climbed up, a back wider than a horse greeted me. It was a bit uncomfortable, but it was okay without a saddle because the fur was fluffy. But this is the first time I've ridden a Black Panther. Where should I hold? For now, I grabbed a bit of Troy's back fur. In the meantime, I saw Zane's cringing figure. Zane, you get on too, hurry. At Troy's urging, Zane came to his senses and approached. Zane climbed up behind me with a little admiration. Hold on tight. Where exactly? Anywhere. As Troy said, I held the fur I was holding tighter. The view changed at the same time. Whoosh, a strong wind blew as Troy flew into the sky. Is this flying? As I was admiring, we crossed the wall in an instant. For a moment, I felt like I was in an amusement park. I almost screamed but barely held it back. Thump, thump. My heart pounded with a pleasant tension. This is pretty fun. You can get off now. As soon as Troy gave me permission, I got off. This was really fun. I should ask him to do this again next time. Huh. As I was excited, I heard Zane sigh next to me. He looked dazed. He must have enjoyed it too. My child, you look happy. It was more fun than I thought. Really. Next time, I'll do it for you. Kairos' words made me imagine myself riding on a small puppy. That's a bit. I can do it too. Kairos tried hard to appeal, but I didn't accept it. After Zane came down with a stunned look on his face, Troy resumed his human form. Zane stared blankly at him for a while before closing his mouth. He must have realized that he shouldn't mess with Troy. Anyway, now that we had crossed the wall and infiltrated the palace, all that was left was to head to the West Tower. Let's take a look at the palace from there first. It's quite high, so it should be fine. I nodded at Zane's words, who had regained his senses. The distance between the wall and the West Tower was not very far. We moved along the nearby roads, keeping our presence low. As Troy said, there was no guard at all. But where is the entrance? It seems to be here. I left Zane and Troy, who were looking around, and headed to the back. The entrance to the West Tower was hidden behind. Thanks to that, the guards wouldn't be able to spot us easily. Oh, it's locked. Zane smiled as he saw the lock on the entrance. Then Troy pondered for a moment and said, "Should I break it?" "No, it's okay. We couldn't make a loud noise here." I stopped Troy and nodded at Zane. Zane understood my intention and took out a master key from his pocket. This guy, he's really useful. Wow, amazing. Zane, you have a great ability. Zane licked his lips as he heard Troy's words and worked hard on the lock. And finally, the lock opened and Zane opened the door. "I'll go first." Troy stepped forward and entered. The kid, he's so nice. There was nothing inside the tower. The only thing there was a spiral staircase that seemed to go on forever. We didn't bother to talk and communicated with each other with eye signals. Troy led the way up the stone stairs, followed by me, and Zane was at the end. The top of the tower was very dark. Only the flickering of the lamps on the walls made it possible to see in front. The only sound that could be heard in the silence was the footsteps of climbing the stairs. And as we climbed and climbed, we finally reached the top. What is this? There was an iron cage at the top of the West Tower, and inside it, a woman was lying on the floor. At the same time, a quest window appeared. Sub-quest Light of Hope 7. The secret of Bahano Palace clear. Sub-quest reward will be given. Sub-quest update. Sub-quest Light of Hope 8. The exiled princess of Bahano Kingdom content. You have learned the secret of Bahano Palace. Rescue the princess who is trapped there. Goal: save the Princess Arhin Bahano of Bahano Kingdom. This quest is a linked quest. Success. Next quest clue failure. Final success reward. Do you accept? Yes/no. I pressed the quest's accept button right away. I knew I would meet this person since the secret of Bahano Palace came out. Anyway, I finally met her. Arhin Bahano. Arhin Bahano. She appears as a capable ruler in the Usser law. Of course, that's only possible in the scenario where I prevented the disaster. What? There's a person in here. Zane muttered with a surprised look. I know, right? I was just thinking of looking at the palace from this tower. I pretended to be surprised too. I knew it, but I was too weak to say anything. I went ahead in case this person would attack us. Troy seemed to have noticed it too. Unexpected, isn't it? There's a person in here. Yeah, it is. I was very surprised. At that moment, the eyelids of Arhin, who was asleep, fluttered and revealed her blue eyes. Arhin quickly looked at us and got up. Who are you? Arhin backed away. She had nowhere else to go, so she leaned against the wall. The woman with dark hair and blue eyes was wary of us. I quickly took off the hood I was wearing, and I spoke with the most harmless face I could muster. I'm sorry if I scared you. We're just visitors. Did Silos send you to make me take that medicine? You should know what my answer is. Arhin shouted. Who is Silos? We're not the ones he sent. I pretended not to know, but Arhin's guard didn't lower. She glared at me and raised her voice. Who else? The wicked high priest of the Rises Church who deceived my father. How dare you try to mock me? Even if I'm exiled in this place, I'm the princess of this country. I'm not someone you can treat as you please. Arhin's hand was trembling with fear, but her eyes were firm. My child, she's not addicted to that medicine. And she's a very brave girl with a clear mind. Is that so? Yes. Can't you get her out of here? It's very pitiful. Well, I was thinking of doing that anyway. As I was talking to Kairos for a while, Zane, who was quietly watching the situation, whispered to me, Master, I know who the exiled princess of Bahano is. He seemed to have heard of Arhin before. From what I know, she matches the appearance of Princess Arhin Bahano. Really? Zane nodded confidently. I looked at him and approached the iron cage. Arhin seemed to have calmed down a bit. Princess, I'm sorry if I startled you. We're from the Herfian Empire, and I'm Leviathan, the leader of the Kairos Church. What, you came from Herfian? Yes. Now that I think about it, that accent, it's the imperial language. She was still on guard, but she listened to my words calmly. It seemed like we could have a conversation. Yes. And this is my servant Zane, and this is Troy, who is from the Mont tribe. Mont tribe. Arhin's eyes widened a little at that word. Mont tribe. Aren't they the ones who were massacred by the oppression of the Rises Church? There were survivors. Arhin was in a situation where she was exiled in the tower, but she had a lot of information, because she was quick to notice and assess the situation before. She was exiled to the West Tower about 2 months ago, so she must have heard about the Mont tribe before that. As Arhin's expression softened a bit at the mention of the Mont tribe, Troy took off his hood tactfully. He also lifted the robe he had worn when he entered the tower and showed his tail. Arhin's guard completely disappeared then. So you are not sent by Silos. That's right. We came here by chance. To put it simply, I told Arhin a brief summary of the story. The Kairos Church was opposing the Rises Church, and we had dealt with the Rises Church in Aldone. And we came to Bahano to follow the will of the god of beauty, Kairos, and help this place. Is that true? Yes. I even gave her a friendly smile, but Arhin's expression was not very bright. She had lowered her guard a lot, but her face was full of worries. I understand your intentions and your hearts, but there are only 3 of you. You can't save Bahano by yourselves. Aldone might have been possible because the Rise's church's influence was not that strong there, but this is not. Bahano is. Even my father, the king, is being played by Silos. I see, but we won't back down, we won't give up either. Arhin Bahano, she was a persistent and strong-minded person more than anyone else. So if we showed her our will, she might join us. More than anything, we needed Arhin's help to succeed in Bahano's salvation. Princess, won't you join us? It was a silent moment. Troy, who had been quiet until then, opened his mouth. But this guy, he was respectful to Kairos, but he was rude to the princess. Maybe he doesn't think humans are worthy of respect. I lost everything to the Rise's church. My tribe, the vast land, my family. And when I was in an endless swamp, the leader saved me. Troy appealed to Arhin with his eyes that were crude but sincere. The leader fought against the high priest of Aldone alone, and he broke the protection of the demon god there. There are still followers of the Kairos church in Aldone. Troy looked at me once and continued, I won't ask you to believe me easily. Just don't miss the opportunity. I will help the leader to save this land so that there won't be any more people like me. Troy's words had no embellishment to deceive the other, but rather his honest crudeness gave me reassurance. I had thought of Troy as a great means of transportation until now. I'm touched. It seems that the darkness of his heart has lifted. Yeah, it does. As I was proudly looking at Troy, I heard Arhin's voice. You're right, I was arrogant. I'm not in a position to choose anything right now. Even if you are a trap sent by Silos, even if you fail to save Bahano, nothing will change if I just stay here. So, she smiled self-deprecatingly and then looked determined. Even if it's a thorny path, I have to walk it. Sub-Quest Light of Hope 8, The Exiled Princess of Bahano Kingdom Clear. Sub-Quest Reward will be given. Sub-Quest Update. Sub-Quest Light of Hope 9. The Salvation of Bahano Kingdom Content. You have rescued the princess who was trapped in Bahano Palace. Now it's time to save Bahano Kingdom with her. Goal: Save Bahano Kingdom. This quest is a linked quest. Final success reward. Failure: the destruction of Bahano Kingdom. Do you accept? Yes/no. I sighed softly. There was no penalty for failing the quest until now, but maybe it was because it was the final quest now. Failure means the destruction of the Bahano Kingdom, and the final success reward was still not shown. It was a bit uneasy, but I couldn't refuse after coming this far. I pressed the quest acceptance. I'm sorry for doubting you, Arhin said bitterly. We were now back at the inn after rescuing Arhin from the tower. It wasn't too hard to get back to the inn since we gave her a robe. She seemed to have relaxed a bit after arriving at the inn, but she was still a little suspicious of us. No, it's okay. I would have doubted you endlessly too. I'm sorry. I should have treated you, but instead I only received your help. It's okay. Just eat this first. I handed Arhin some bread. She looked quite thin under the bright lamp. It was too late for a decent meal, so I gave her some bread and she ate it right away. Thank you. She ate the bread quickly. She also gulped down the water that Zane gave her. When she had filled her stomach a bit, I opened my mouth. I want to hear what happened in Bahano during this time. Wen was silent for a moment. She closed her eyes and then opened them again. She parted her lips and spoke. About 10 months ago, the Rise's church entered Bahano. When the Rise's church first infiltrated Bahano, they started from the small villages, just like they did with other branches. The only difference was that they soon requested an audience with the king. It was not uncommon for religious groups to visit the king as a courtesy, so the king of Bahano accepted their request. The Rise's church offered the king a large amount of jewels and gold coins and secretly gave him happy. The king of Bahano was a hedonist by nature, so he took it without hesitation. He was always like that, simple, stupid, and incompetent. I was not surprised. He was not a very important character, but anyone who played the game would know what kind of king he was. Meanwhile, Arhin seemed to understand my nod and continued her story. They must have known that my father enjoyed pleasures and approached him accordingly. Arhin bit her lips slightly and resumed her speech. After the king of Bahano received happy from the Rise's church, it didn't take long for him to become completely addicted to it. That's when it started. The king began to get close to the high priest of the Rise's church, Silos. Silos, who received the king's favor, naturally gained power, and the Rise's church, backed by his power, started to distribute happy to the public. From then on, Bahano began to shake. No, to be honest, it must have been shaking even before that. Arhin added with a sunken eye. After that, Haven Bahano, who was designated as the next king, also became addicted to happy. Arhin's sister, Melina Bahano, raised a rebellion against the king and Silos, but she was killed by the Mad King, and Arhin was locked up in the tower and tormented by the Rise's church. The high priest Silos towered with the king in front of Arhin, and he deliberately did not feed happy to Arhin. He told her to watch Bahano crumble. After that, Arhin trailed off. Bahano, walking the path of destruction by the king who fell into pleasure. It's the same as the original story. There was only one difference. The divine protection had moved to the palace. The problem was that this one thing made the situation very complicated. I see, you must have had a hard time. I looked at Arhin and spoke with a sympathetic face. Of course, I felt genuinely sorry for her since I was seeing what I used to see as a game story in reality. Rise's church. On the other hand, Troy, who heard Arhin's story, clenched his fist so hard that it turned white and muttered. The hatred in his eyes was clearly visible. They shook a whole country. The Rise's church bastards. They crossed the line when they had the way of the sage. Zane also seemed to be quite angry as he brushed his hair back with a sigh, but Kairos is quiet. The one who would have been the most sorry for this story did not say anything. Kairos, I tried to call him, but there was no answer. Did he go to see the kids? He must have gone to the temple by himself. Well, it's not a big deal since he does that often. That's all I have to say. Now I want to hear your story. Do you have a plan? Arhin looked at me with eyes that were brighter than before. I put on a business smile and answered, I don't have a grand plan yet. As soon as I said that, Arhin's eyebrows furrowed. At the same time, the expressions of Zane and Troy, who were sitting around her, hardened a bit. Then what are you going to do? I have some rough ideas, though. Zane came closer to me at that moment. He poked my side and whispered, Master, do you really have no plan at all? I don't have a detailed plan, but I do have some ideas. I was not the type to plan and act for everything, but that doesn't mean I have no thoughts at all. I had been thinking about the methods I used in the way of the sage and sorted them out roughly. I have faced the Rise's church several times and survived, so I know how to fight them to some extent. Don't worry, I said with a smile, but Arhin looked skeptical. She tilted her head and pondered for a while, then opened her mouth. So, what are you going to do? First of all, I have set a few goals. First, the divine protection. The Rise's church and the Diego church have the protection of each god. Oh, of course, we have it in the Cairo's church too. Protection. It's something that contains the power of the gods, and it's used to protect the temple. Simply put, it's a shield that protects a certain area. Arhin nodded as if she understood. I continued. If we destroy the divine protection, the power that protects the Rise's church will disappear. And right now, the divine protection is in the palace as far as I know. Have you ever seen it? The divine protection. Well, what does it look like? It's a black sphere the size of a human head. A sphere. Arhin thought hard, then her lips curled up. Yeah, I've seen it. I'm sure I saw it in the high priest's room in the palace. I had a rough guess, but it was exactly right. I see. And the second goal is the high priest. If we capture the high priest's body, the Rise's church will be tied up for a while. Yeah, I know that too, but it won't be easy. Yes, it won't be. There will be guards and priests around the high priest or the forces under the Rise's church, but you don't have to worry too much about that. I shrugged my shoulders, and I pointed to Troy and Zane with my hand. These guys are pretty strong. I know that the Monts are strong, but Arhin looked at Zane with a suspicious eye. Then Zane jumped up from his seat. Princess, I'm pretty strong, and Master, why did you leave yourself out of the story? I'm nothing but a force, you know. Ha, really? I've seen you beat up monsters with that weird stick so many times. I gestured to Zane to calm down. Then I met Arhin's eyes, and she seemed to be interested in me. I heard you're the leader, but you're also on the front line. Well, yeah. Anyone who leads a group should set an example. Arhin's lips rose slightly. She didn't seem to be negative, which was a relief. Besides, there are other forces that are not here right now. They can help us anytime. How many are they? 2, but they are stronger than me, so you don't have to worry. So there are 5 of us in total, yes. Arhin nodded after hearing my answer. I see. What's next? She seemed to accept it. The third goal is to secure all the mandrake heads that are circulating in the kingdom. They are the cure for happy. I said that, but I knew it was not easy to secure the supply, and Arhin seemed to know that too. That's impossible. Arhin said flatly, all the mandrake heads in the kingdom are now with the high priest Silos. Silos? Zane asked, and Arhin added an explanation. When Silos started to visit the palace frequently, he bought them all. I wondered why he did that, but it turned out to be the cure for happy. Arhin touched her temples. She was very sorry, but there was nothing she could do. Not many people knew that mandrake heads were the cure for happy. Besides, Silos acted as he pleased. Actually, I said it as the third, but securing enough mandrake heads is the most important. Even though it's hard to get any, you want enough. When I entered Bahano, I saw that more people than I thought were addicted to happy, and you said that even His Majesty was addicted. But We have to stop the atrocities of the Rise's church as soon as possible. You don't think that you only have to save His Majesty and not the people, do you? Arhin shook her head violently and shouted at my words. Of course, saving the people is a natural thing to do. Then let me ask you this. Do you know where the high priest keeps the mandrake heads? Arhin nodded. There is a separate palace where the high priest lives in the palace. Before I was locked up in the tower, I saw Silos moving the mandrake heads to the separate palace. I see. I understand. And there is one more thing I want to ask you. What is it? Do you know how to get to the separate palace where the high priest stays without being noticed by the guards? That was what I was most curious about. No matter how many times I played the game, the routes of the guards were not detailed. I just had to choose from a few options and I could move automatically. First, tell me how and when the guards in the palace move. At Arhin's words, I was finally able to smile sincerely. Bahano Palace, Silos' separate palace. It was late at night, but the high priest Silos was awake. He left his bedroom and hurried to the high priest's room where the blessing of Mazine was. He had received his call while he was asleep. Clank. Silos, who opened the door of the high priest's room and rushed in, approached the blessing behind the curtain, and he lay flat on the floor. His white hair touched the cold marble, but he didn't care. Human. A low and gloomy voice came from the blessing. Yes, yes. At the holy voice, Silos couldn't even lift his head. Something intruded near the west tower a while ago. Yes, yes. What is that? How can there be an intrusion when there is a blessing? I don't know what trick they used, but they escaped the palace with the human who was trapped in the west tower. What? They escaped with the princess. Yes. Silos's eyes widened as much as possible. He had unconsciously lifted his head, which was clenched, but he soon realized his mistake and was startled and lay down again. But that's almost impossible. Yes, but they must have found a weak spot in the blessing. Silos broke out in a cold sweat. Did the Diego Church notice something here? As he thought that, he heard his voice again. So we moved the plan forward. The plan. They only had one plan. Ah, I understand. I will execute it as soon as the sun rises. Silos swallowed his saliva. Then, the voice continued. No, the plan starts now. The voice ended there, but Silos felt like he heard this laughter. After an hour-long meeting, we had a rough plan in place. Thanks to Arhin, who knew the routes of the guards, infiltrating the Bahano royal palace seemed not too difficult. I ran a simulation in my head. First, I secure all the mandrake roots, capture the high priest's new recruits, and destroy the barrier. Then, I throw the mandrake roots into the large-scale monsterization device that Silos must have hidden somewhere. That way I could save Bahano, but there was one problem. I didn't know the exact location of the monsterization device. It would be much easier if I did. I was sure it was inside the palace, but it never appeared in the main story. The large-scale monsterization always happened before the player arrived. It was always too late to stop it. As if it had to be that way. But what I was doing now was a hidden route. The arrival time and the story progression had changed long ago. This event is already tricky enough, and the hidden route makes it even harder. That's why I want to stop it this time. Master, that's when I heard Zane's voice. Zane, Troy, and I were walking on the street. We had given the lodging to Arhin, who looked very tired. It wouldn't be easy for her to rest with the three of us around. What is it? I don't know if it's just my feeling, but... Zane looked at the sky and pointed somewhere with his hand. Doesn't that look similar to what we saw in the cartel forest? Zane pointed at the sky right above the palace. It was the time of sunrise, but the sky over the palace was unusually dark. No way. I opened my eyes wide. There was a black mist over the palace like a cloud. That's the mist that led to the death of our tribe. I heard Troy's trembling voice from the side. Damn it, this is crazy. I cursed out loud. The large-scale monsterization had already begun. The ominous black mist that covered the sky. I knew what it was that triggered Troy's trauma. Large-scale monsterization. No, why? How come the large-scale monsterization has already started? I couldn't understand it. I thought there was still time left before the monsterization happened, but I couldn't deny the reality in front of me. Something had gone wrong. Did it happen because we rescued Arhin from the Western Tower? Then they were just waiting for the right time and they had everything ready, damn it. I was careless. The monsterization always happened before the player arrived, regardless of the arrival time. It was up to them when to pick up the spoon from the prepared table. I was short-sighted. I bit my lip. I felt my mental state crumbling. What should I do? How should I move? When the mist touches those who are addicted to happy, they either die or become monsters. That's what happened to my tribe, and I saw the high priest of Aldone experimenting with it. As I watched the mist anxiously, Troy muttered quietly, That's ridiculous." Zane also looked shocked. I looked at their faces and closed my eyes. Calm down. I had to calm down to overcome this situation. I had to steel my mind. There were many lives at stake in the upcoming ordeal. First of all, it's impossible to stop the monsterization that has already started. The mist was spreading faster than I could go and fix the monsterization device. I couldn't catch up with it at human speed. In other words, all the plans I had made were shattered. Master, what should we do? Leader, we have to stop it. The people might all die. Zane and Troy urged me. I clenched my trembling hand. Yes, the situation was hopeless, but it was worth a try. First, we have to go and wake the princess up. I turned my body toward the lodging. What the hell is that? Arhin was shocked to hear the situation. It was only natural, since the words she heard after waking up were no different from the kingdom's destruction. Those who are addicted to happy will die or become monsters when the mist touches them. Sometimes there are survivors, but I don't know the exact probability. Troy added an explanation before I opened my mouth. He was right. The monsterization experiment by the Rises Church had advanced a lot after many trials. So, those who had their skin discolored by happy, even a little bit, would change as soon as the mist touched them. The only ones who could survive this disaster were those who had never taken happy or whose skin had not yet changed. You said when the mist touches them, right? Then we have to evacuate the people right away. She slammed the table and voiced her opinion. I spoke calmly to Arhin. It's too late to evacuate. The mist is spreading very fast. It's still spreading now. Someone who heard me might think I was cold-hearted, but it was the truth. The mist was faster than humans, and it was devouring the capital bit by bit. And even if they hid in the buildings, the fine particles could enter through the small gaps. Even so, we have to save at least one person. Arhin jumped up from her seat. Her blue eyes were filled with determination. I understand. I sighed and said, but you can't move alone. I wasn't ignoring Arhin. I knew her abilities to some extent, but it would be dangerous if the monsters came. Master, I will go with the princess and evacuate the people, Zane said with a resolute look. He knew I needed Troy, so he volunteered. Okay, but don't take too long. If the people turn into monsters, come back to the palace right away. I'll go to the palace with Troy. I understand. Zane got up from his seat and I too got up. Princess, I'll go to the palace with Troy and try to stop or slow down the mist. Got it. As soon as the meeting was over, I hurried out of the lodging. Troy followed me quickly. Troy, I'm counting on you. Don't worry. Troy transformed into a black panther. It was dawn and some people were walking on the street, but we didn't have time to care about their stares. Hold on tight, leader. Don't worry. As soon as I got on his back, Troy started to run fast. At this speed. As Troy's speed increased, the buildings around us became almost invisible. Only one thing was clear: the flow of the mist that started to spread from the palace. The black mist that had been floating in the sky over the palace had reached the town by now. The flow of the mist that had already started to spread would not stop until it covered Bahano. And the Bahano Palace had become a dark mass of black mist, as if it was the source of the mist. The palace is already done for. At the same time, the black mist in front of us approached. Troy and I entered the mist in an instant. The visibility was very poor. I could only see a few meters around. Leader, we're at the palace. Thanks to Troy's fast movement, we reached the palace entrance in no time. How horrible. I nodded at Troy's murmur. Most of the guards who guarded the palace entrance were dead, spitting blood. Some of them looked like they had just fainted, but their condition was not good either. Leader, the gate is closed. We have no choice but to break it. Got it. Hold on tight. As Troy warned me, his upper body rose. I thought I was going to fall off when, crash, Troy's sharp claws smashed the gate to pieces. It was made of wood, but it was still thick. I was glad I had him by my side. Are you hurt? Don't worry about me. Troy stepped on the debris and entered the palace. I tightly gripped his fur again and said, "Do you know where the annex is?" "I do. Don't worry." Troy's speed increased again. I knew where Silos was staying thanks to Arhin. But it was not easy to find the location, since the whole palace was engulfed by the black mist. Of course, I had the memory of the original work in my head, so I had a map of the palace. I was going to tell Troy if he went the wrong way, but he surprisingly went straight to the annex. Krrr, keek. When we had crossed half of the vast garden, we heard the sound of monsters. I narrowed my eyes. They had human shapes, but their whole bodies were blackened. They were monsters, no doubt. And they were wearing armor, which meant they were the soldiers who guarded the palace. Leader, be careful. I'm fine, just keep moving. I took the holy mace out from my inventory, and I swung it at the monsters that ran towards us. Thud, thwack. The monsters that were hit by my mace flew away. Don't stop, Troy. Got it. Thwack, thud. I swung the mace and dealt with the monsters. After killing about 20 of them, we finally arrived at the annex. The soldiers who guarded the entrance of the annex were also dead like the others. I looked at them with pity and got off Troy. The annex was as white as the main palace, and it was beautiful. The flower beds that filled the surroundings would have made me feel good if I had seen them at another time. But now there were monsterized servants and blood stains. Thud, smash. I killed the monsters with Troy and got close to the building. How tragic. Troy, who had returned to his human form, muttered bitterly. I patted his shoulder once and opened the door of the annex. Krrr. Keek. As if they were waiting for us, the monsters rushed at us. The holy mace was stained black with the blood of the monsters. The short battle ended and a gruesome scene captured me. Bodies that were not intact, as if they had been attacked by monsters. Red puddles, monster corpses. I closed my eyes tightly and opened them again and moved on. My plan was not ruined. Even though the monsterization had started, I could still reduce the damage if I moved as planned. So, what I needed right now was the mandrake roots. But where were they? I knew they were in the annex where Silos was staying, but I didn't know the exact location. Then, I took out a pouch from my inventory that contained the mandrake roots. There was not much of it, so it was not enough. But, Troy, can you track the smell of this plant? Maybe I could use it like this. I felt a bit sorry for treating Troy like a beast, but I had no choice. I'll try. Fortunately, Troy took the mandrake root from me without any sign of displeasure. Sniff, sniff. He sniffed the herb a few times and then lifted his head. His face turned to the right. I found it. I put the mandrake root he handed me back into my inventory and followed Troy. As we moved, we dealt with the monsters that came our way. Soon we found a staircase that led down. It's down there. Was there a warehouse underground? We went down the stairs and saw a wooden door in a dark place. Clank. I grabbed the handle and turned it, but the door didn't open. It was locked. If I had a lockpick, I would have opened it. No choice. Bang! I smashed the door knob with my mace. The door knob broke and the door opened. We entered and saw a spacious warehouse. There were many miscellaneous things inside, but 5 sacks caught my eye. The sacks were about half the size of an adult and as fat as a human body. I opened them and checked what was inside. I found it. All 5 sacks contained mandrake roots. I lifted my lips and opened my inventory. Should I move them? Troy stepped forward to grab the sacks, but I snatched them back, and I stuffed all 5 sacks into my inventory. Wow! Troy exclaimed in a low voice. How can you put them in thin air? It's a power given by Kairos. I explained briefly and passed by Troy, who was still amazed. Now I had to find the large-scale monsterization device. It was a product of research that the Rise's church had seduced the magicians and alchemists into creating. I'm sure Silos is controlling it. Where could it be? I thought as I climbed the stairs. The large-scale monsterization device was a device that emitted black mist and turned people into monsters, and it all started when the sky of the royal capital turned black. Then there was only one place where the device could be. Troy, let's go to the highest point of this palace. Why? There might be something that emits this black mist there. I explained briefly and climbed the stairs. We encountered some palace servants who had turned into monsters, but we easily disposed of them with Troy. As we climbed the stairs finally ended, and we saw a small corridor and a translucent glass door. As soon as we opened the door, a wide-open rooftop appeared. There was an old man who looked like he was in his 70s and a huge flask. The old man with white hair was smiling happily as he looked at the huge flask. That robe, he's definitely the high priest of the Rises Church. Troy growled and raised his claws as he spoke to me. Yeah, I know. That old man was Silos, and the huge flask next to him, which was boiling with black liquid, was the large-scale monsterization device. The liquid in the flask vaporized and produced black mist endlessly. The mist was spreading throughout Bahano. Ho ho, what a surprise! Guests who come without notice. Silos turned his gaze to us as he looked at the flask. The old man's dull black eyes gave me the creeps. You are rude people. Silos turned his body toward us. Then Troy shouted, "How dare you? You try to turn people into monsters. Ha ha, that is our mission and our great work." Mission, great work, what's so important about that? It's important. It's the command of him. This world will soon belong to him, and when that time comes, we will return to his side. Silos stroked his beard and smiled. The old man was referring to the demon lord. The demon lord Shamir was planning to turn humans into monsters and make them his army and to oppose the evil god. Now, why don't you join us? A bright future awaits us. At once, Silos reached out his hand to us. At the same time, black liquid spewed out of his hand. Dodge, Troy. I pushed Troy's body away. Squeak. The floor where we had been standing was melted by the liquid that Silos spewed. This time, you won't be able to avoid it. Splash. Black liquid flew out of Silos's hand like a whip. I quickly got up and blocked Troy's front. Master, squeak. My robe was melted by Silos's poison. The effect of the hidden item 1,000-year-old genie's underwear nullifies the Pavis poison. I saw a system window that appeared at the same time and couldn't help but smile with relief. Ah, really? It was worth the trouble. I muttered and shook off the blood-stained holy mace. The monster's blood splattered on the floor. What? Silos looked at me in shock. Yeah, he had no choice but to be surprised. The only weapon that the damned old man had was poison. Master, are you okay? Ah, yes, it's just a little poison. It's not like I rolled around for nothing. I smiled at Troy and slowly approached Silos. How can you survive after being hit by my poison? Splash! Silos spewed more poison with his eyes wide open. Thanks to that, my robe was in tatters, and so was the shirt I was wearing underneath. I'm going to be naked at this rate. I bit my tongue. Before I knew it, Silos was right in front of me. He collapsed on the floor as if he was about to pee. What are you? How can my poison not work on you? Grandpa, have you ever heard of the term immune to all poisons? What is that? Never mind. Crash! I swung my mace and hit Silos's head. He groaned and lost consciousness. I didn't hit him too hard, just enough to make him faint. His punishment was not up to me but someone else. I opened my inventory and took out the sacks of mandrake roots and a rope. Troy, tie this bastard up with this. Okay. Troy looked like he had something to say, but he obediently took the rope. I checked that he tied Silos up thoroughly and then approached the huge flask. I opened the sack of herbs and poured them into the flask. Squeak, squeak, the countless mandrake roots melted as they entered the flask. But their ingredients didn't melt, so the dark potion gradually turned white. The black mist that was spewing out of the flask also turned white. Now, white mist would spread over Bahano. It's not a perfect solution, but as long as I took this measure, at least people wouldn't be more contaminated than they already are now. Of course, many people had already become monsters or died. It was something I did to reduce the damage. Master, what kind of person are you? Before I knew it, Troy came to my side with Silos's wrists, ankles, and body tied up. He looked like he wanted to kill Silos right away, but he marveled at the white mist. You can take out or put things in thin air. You're not affected by poison. Well, let's just say I'm a chosen one by God. I'm the master of the Kairos church. Ah, I see. Troy nodded as if he understood. I smiled at him and went to Silos, who had fainted. Silos, who was lying on the floor with his whole body tied up, was definitely unconscious. So I put my hand on the rope that tied him up, and I infused holy power into the rope. A small light spread over the rope, changing its color to white. Then the rope changed its shape to look like the restraint that Troy wore, only its color was white. Master, what is this? Ah, a restraint. This guy won't be able to use poison anymore. It was an idea I got from seeing Hamel's restraint, and it actually worked. Troy, take this guy. Okay. Troy carried Silos on his shoulder. I came down from the rooftop with him. There were no more monsters in the palace. It seemed that there weren't many servants and soldiers. As we walked down the stairs, a particularly fancy door came into view. Master, follow me, Troy. I opened the door right away. There were many ornaments inside, from paintings with colorful backgrounds to pottery made by craftsmen. Decorating the room lavishly must be a characteristic of the high priests of the Rise's church. I walked with a grim face. Gradually, I felt a sinister aura. Splash! I pulled away the curtain that covered one wall of the high priest's room. Then I saw the demon lord's blessing inside. I can feel the blessing's power. I smiled slyly and lifted my mace high, and I swung it hard to break the blessing. Crash! You have destroyed the demon lord's blessing. You have acquired the land and buildings of the Rise's church Bahano branch with the effect of the achievement Demon Lord's Blessing Destroyer. You have acquired the land and buildings of the Rise's church Bahano branch. You can establish the Kairos church temple. When you establish the Kairos church temple, you will receive 10 officer draw tickets as a reward. Do you want to establish the temple? Yes/no. As I looked at the system window that appeared again, I frowned without realizing it. What the hell? Until now, every time I destroyed a blessing and established a temple, I got a regional purification light, but the reward given to me now was officer draw tickets. No, of course, officer draw tickets are nice, but what I needed now was a purification light. Damn it. I swallowed a curse and accepted the temple establishment. The Rise's church Bahano branch has been converted into the Kairos church temple. Since Kairos wasn't looking at me right now, I didn't hear his voice. And the draw tickets also went into my inventory by themselves. Well, that's that. Let's just keep doing what I have to do. It would have been easier if I had a purification light, but I can't help it. Troy, let's go. I left the high priest's room with Troy. Now it's the king's turn. I organized the order and left the palace. When I did, whiz, thud, I heard the sound of an arrow cutting through the wind. Master, there's Zane over there. Troy pointed, and I saw Zane and Arhin surrounded by monster soldiers. Zane, princess. I ran to them and beat the monsters with my mace. Master, you should have come sooner. Zane, who was breathing hard with a bow in his hand, blamed me. Is this my fault? I pushed Zane aside and looked at Arhin. She asked me anxiously, Leviathan, what is going on here, and what is that white mist? Arhin looked at me with fearful eyes, worried that the white mist might harm the people again. Calm down, princess. I explained to her calmly. I found some mandrake roots in the palace and I put them in the device that was creating the black mist. That should stop the monsterization from happening anymore. Unfortunately, there is nothing we can do for those who have already turned into monsters. Really? Then I can relax a bit. Yes, and I also captured silos. I nodded at Troy, who threw silos on the ground. How is this possible? You two really took care of silos. Arhin looked at me and Troy with disbelief, as if she couldn't trust her eyes. To be precise, the master did it by himself. Troy added the explanation. My goodness, Silos is a master of poison. How did you manage to defeat him so easily? I'm a bit resistant to poison. I shrugged my shoulders and Zane, who was watching me from the side, chuckled. Ugh, master, you seem to be resistant to poison, but your clothes are not. Oh, right. I quickly lowered my head. My robe and shirt were melted and torn by the poison, exposing my stomach. Well, it's not too bad, right? Zane said as if to comfort me. That made me feel worse. I opened my inventory and took out a spare robe to change into. Anyway. I cleared my throat and spoke to Arhin again. By mixing the mandrake roots, I prevented any further monsterization, but it was too late for the royal castle, the center of the black mist. At that, Arhin's eyes widened. Don't tell me my father too. I nodded my head instead of answering. No, it can't be. I have to see it for myself. She turned her body hastily. Arhin must have wanted to cling to any hope, but sadly King Hebius was already a monster. But I followed Arhin. I had no choice. I had to deal with the monster king. Where is His Majesty the King? He should be in the main palace. Then the main palace must be in a terrible state. I hurried along with Arhin, Zane, and Troy. Some soldiers who had turned into monsters popped out along the way, but it was easy to handle them with more people. Before long, we reached the main palace, the largest and most beautiful building in the royal castle. Aya, save me! Screams erupted from inside the main palace. Arhin started to run. I ran after her. The door of the main palace was wide open. Between the door, I could see the corpses of those who couldn't escape and died. We passed the red puddles and entered inside. A large hall appeared, and from the spacious staircase in the center of the hall, something surrounded by a black shape was coming down. Cruck! It had a huge claw that gripped a soldier's waist. With a squishy sound, the soldier's body stretched out, thudded through the corpse away. It was King Bahano, surrounded by black energy, Hebius Bahano. Ah, father! Arhin called him with a terrified voice. Then the king's gaze turned to us. King Hebius, who had a greedy face in his mid-40s, his body, except for his face, looked like it was all lumped together by black energy. Even his face was blackened so that it looked like a black sphere from a distance. Why, father? Tears flowed from Arhin's eyes. Soon her legs gave way and she collapsed on the floor. I stared at her quietly, then took a step forward. Cruck. The monster king came down the stairs one by one. Every time black fluid dripped down. At the same time, a terrible stench filled my nose and I frowned. How much happy did he consume to smell so bad? I don't think it was that bad before. Those who consumed happy and turned into monsters had a stronger smell depending on how much they were eroded by magic. But the stench from King Hebius was like a mixture of sewer and rotten corpse. Master, that's already a monster, right? Yeah, and a pretty strong one. I turned my gaze from King Hebius and looked around. There were corpses of servants, maids, and soldiers everywhere on the stairs where he came down. I narrowed my eyes and whispered to Zane and Troy behind me, "Back off, I'll handle it myself." King Hebius also used poison like silos, so it was easier for me to fight alone than with Zane and Troy. Besides, I got the immunity to poison effect for this, but I couldn't move my feet rashly. I knew in my head that I had to kill King Hebius, but I was mindful of Arhin. No matter how bad the relationship between Arhin and the king was, it would be a sight of killing her father in front of his daughter, so I just clenched my holy relic mace and waited. Leviathan. Arhin's voice reached me. Unlike before, it was a clear voice without tears. I turned my head and looked at Arhin. She had already gotten up from her seat, and then she said to me with determined eyes, "Even if he is my father, I can't let him live. He has lost his mind and killed his own people with his hands." The trembling in her hands stopped. "So don't hesitate. While you hesitate, my people are dying somewhere." I nodded slowly. Arhin Bahano, the capable ruler I only saw in text and graphics, was a really strong person. I understand. Now that she had made up her mind, I had nothing more to worry about. I turned my gaze back to King Hebius. He was staring blankly at me, then he stretched his body. Then he grew 2 arms and 2 legs. At the same time, the black energy that surrounded him scattered on the floor and turned into small monsters. They looked like goblins. Kair. As the king reached out his hand to me, the 5 goblins rushed at me. Kayak. Splat. I chopped off one of their heads, but I couldn't stop the other 4 from charging at me. Squeak. A goblin clung to my leg. Soon it melted into poison and flowed down. Oh, my pants. The effect of the hidden item 1,000-year-old genie's lining nullifies the Pavis poison. I sighed at the lost hem and walked forward. I killed 3 goblins with my mace. Kair, the last remaining goblin, also stuck to my left arm. I moved my body, afraid that the poison might splash on my comrades behind me. Squeak. My robe and shirt melted away, revealing my left arm. Ugh, how annoying, but this was not the time to be annoyed. I quickly moved my feet. I dodged nimbly and ran straight toward the king. Swish. 6 tentacles whipped at me at the same time. I dodged 3 and cut 2. One of the tentacles hit my right shoulder. It didn't hurt much, but my robe and shirt melted away again, exposing my body. I hate this. It was a good thing that I always carried spare clothes and robes. Otherwise, I would have almost saved the kingdom naked. Thud. I fended off the tentacles that came at me and faced the king. Cruck. The king, who finally realized that his poison didn't work on me, lunged at me directly. Thud, thwack. I swung my mace at the king's elongated arms. Zap. At the same time, I released holy power from my other hand. The laser-like holy power sliced through the king's waist. Now's the time. I leaped into the air. When the king's body tilted as his waist was cut off, thud, I smashed his head hard, splash. A burst of black liquid splashed and melted everything around. My robe was also torn again, but finally the king's body turned into ash and disappeared. Ha! I calmed down my rough breath and stepped back from the king. Father! I heard Arhin's sobbing voice from behind, but I didn't have time to look back. Now that I killed the king, it was time for that thing to appear. Where the king had disappeared, crackle the air started to crack, as if a rift was opening, but the size was different from what I had seen before, only big enough for one person to come out. Ma Master, what is that? Is that a rift? No, no way. Zane and Troy shouted in surprise. I couldn't explain to them. What was about to appear was one of the children of the demon god. Ooh, come. When did he regain his senses? I heard Silos's shrill voice from behind. I ignored his voice and stared at the rift. The gap widened and a foot came out first. A foot with blue skin, unlike humans. Above it I could see the muscular thigh. Gulp, I swallowed nervously and gripped my holy relic mace with both hands. Wait. Suddenly, confusion filled my head. The child of the demon god that the high priest of Bahano served was supposed to have no feet or legs. What's going on? But in the midst of the confusion, the thing was coming out of the rift. Come quickly, save us. Silos screamed in frenzy. Then a man appeared from the torn rift. I stepped back without realizing it. I couldn't believe my eyes. The child of the demon god that came out of the rift. He had a blue lower body full of muscles and a black upper body that was solid. A gray face and black hair that reached his waist. And his eyes were the opposite of humans, with black whites and white pupils. The only emotion in his white eyes was mockery toward humans. This can't be. Why? Ooh, the great Zarkle. Zarkle. I heard his name clearly from Silos's voice, and even if I hadn't heard his name, I knew his face. I had no choice. The children of the demon god had their strength determined by the order they were born. The first one born was not as powerful as the demon god, but he was not far behind. In other words, the lower the number, the stronger they were. But the child of the demon god that communicated with Silos, the high priest of Bahano, was the 66th. But Zarkle was not the 66th. Zarkle, he was the second child of the demon god who only appeared in the latter part of the superior law. My hands holding the holy relic mace trembled involuntarily. I couldn't win. Never. I knew it in my head from the beginning, but my instinct warned me more strongly. Run, escape. I couldn't match the power of the demon god that I felt from him. Should I call the kids? No, that would be impossible. What if I called Tertius? Maybe he could do it. Troy. No, impossible, not yet. But my thoughts ended there. Ugh, when did it happen? Before I knew it, Zarkle's hand pierced through my chest. I couldn't breathe properly because of the intense pain. Something welled up inside me and spilled out. Hot blood flowed down from my mouth. Master, Lord, Leviathan. I heard the voices of my comrades, but my vision was getting blurry. Damn it. Is this how it all ends? Thud. Zarkle pulled his hand that pierced my chest out, but I couldn't even scream. I felt my strength leaving my body and my sight turning upside down. I collapsed to the ground, but I didn't feel the pain. The agony was spreading from my heart. Is this how I die? There was so much I hadn't done yet. I had to save this world. I had so much to do. I don't want to die yet, but contrary to my will, my consciousness was fading away, and I closed my eyes. I want some sausage. Kairos, who appeared as a puppy, was rolling around in his temple in Roval. Sasha, who was quietly reading a book next to him, got up from her seat. She headed to the kitchen for Kairos. Kairos, who was left alone, sat on the sofa and scratched his itchy body with his hind legs. Grrr. He felt a bad premonition at that moment. My child. At the same time, he felt the breath of his first child and apostle, Reveloff, who was connected to him, weaken. He gathered his strength in an instant. A pure white light enveloped Kairos's body. Then he disappeared from the temple. Soon he appeared in a very far and deep dimension. In a space where the blue sky and green grassland spread out, Kairos' divine spirit appeared. He looked nothing like the puppy he was just before. His beautiful crimson hair fluttered in the wind. Kairos quickly checked the situation of his first apostle. Then a large screen appeared in the air. Cough. On the screen, Reveloff, who was stabbed in the chest by one of the children of Mazin, was shown. Kairos' eyes widened at the sight, shouted desperately at the sky. How could this happen? This was an impossible thing. When Kairos shouted at the sky again, a golden light poured down from the clouds. The light wrapped around Kairos. Kairos spoke urgently to the light. What is going on here? This is absurd. Kairos felt his heart being torn apart and appealed to the sky. Why does my child have to die like this? You said he could do it with this soul. Kairos protested angrily to the void. Then a majestic voice came from the quiet sky. Oh, this is something I didn't expect either. Kairos frowned at the gentle voice. You have to save my child. If this goes on, both my child and this world will collapse. Sigh, fine, I understand. Don't worry, I'll help you. Why did my child get hurt in Bahano of all places? Didn't I tell you? That world is unstable right now. That's why I sent him to you. But you didn't say that he would be in danger. Yes, I did. But there is always a variable. So do I have to do this every time something happens? Kairos' eyes moistened. It shouldn't happen often. Are you sure? Let's save him first. The voice sounded tired. Kairos knew it well, so he couldn't say anything more. He clenched his fist tightly and turned his eyes to the screen anxiously. Ding! A familiar alert sound rang. That's when my hazy consciousness woke up. What is this? My last memory was being stabbed in the chest by Zarkal, and I died. But why did I wake up? Is it because this world is a game? I lifted my heavy eyelids. Then I saw a system message in front of me. System error occurred. Balance adjustment started to control the abnormally increased difficulty. Your soul has been forcibly moved for your protection. I read the message carefully and I got a slight idea. Yeah, this is too much. Even if it's a hidden route, it was too hard. Originally, the 66th child of Mazin should have appeared, but the second child showed up. This was like the difficulty suddenly jumped to hell mode. In fact, my level was barely above beginner, but it felt like I met the final boss. But the system protected me. This system, it must be friendly to me. Then will it protect me if I'm in danger later? As I thought that, I saw my surroundings. I was in a dark space where no light came in. Like space, but I saw a small light in the distance. That's when I heard a voice. That's not it. This was a voice I had never heard before. It sounded like a mix of male and female voices, and it was delivered to my head like Kairos did. But not it. Does it mean it read my thoughts and answered? This was all due to an unexpected variable, something that even I couldn't foresee, an event that you couldn't overcome at this point. As I heard his voice, I was certain. The one who was talking to me was the administrator of the system that brought me to this world, or something similar to that. Who are you? Ha ha, you are curious about my existence even in this situation. Of course I am. You are the one who sent me here and gave me impossible quests, aren't you? You are smarter than I expected. Listen, kid, this is not the time. What do you mean? Someday the time will come. Until then, save this world for me. His voice gradually faded away. Hey, wait a minute, I still have more questions. Don't worry, this world is after all. With that voice I heard nothing more. The light that cut through the darkness also disappeared. The only thing I could see was the system window. The system is rebooting. The memories of the characters are erased and altered. The balance is adjusted. As I read the system messages, my consciousness blurred. Oh, not again. When I opened my eyes again, the surroundings had changed. I was no longer in the pitch-black darkness, but in the Bahano kingdom. Zarkle, who was in front of me, was nowhere to be seen. At that moment, the air cracked and a rift opened. What? No way. Ma Master, what is that? Is that a rift? This is absurd. I heard the voices of Zane and Troy. They were saying the same things as before. What's going on? I frowned unconsciously. Oh, come forth. Silos shouted in a hoarse voice, also repeating his words. Could it be? Did time go back? I quickly bowed my head and checked my body. It was the same as right after I killed the king of Hebius. The chest that was not pierced, the clothes that were torn here and there. Then my head spun. To sum it up, the system administrator saved me from dying to the exponentially increased difficulty, erased and altered the memories of the characters, and even turned back time. Then, as if to confirm my guess, a message appeared again. You have received a special reward from the administrator. Administrator's apology buff. All your stats are increased by 10 times for 30 minutes. Crazy, what is this? My stats are increased by 10 times. Wait a minute, but I can't see my stats in the status window, can I? How can I tell how strong I am if you just say it's 10 times higher? Oh, the glorious Hellies. As I checked the buff, I heard Silos's voice. Hellies was the 66th child of the Demon King, just like in the original story. I took my eyes off the system window and looked up. Then I saw a woman coming out of the rift. Blue hair and black body and a black tail with scales. This woman, who had the appearance of a mermaid, was Hellies. Yeah, it should have been like this from the start. How does it make sense for Zarkle to pop out of Bahano? I glared at the system and smiled faintly. Well, at least it saved me. You are the brat who interfered with me. Hellies floated in the air and looked down at me. Her voice was very sweet. Your appearance is to my liking. She reached out her hand to me as if to seduce me. Come here. I will make you my special concubine. A seductive voice and a captivating gaze. I slowly approached Hellies. Yeah, right. She smiled beautifully. When I was only a few steps away from Hellies, boom, I released my holy power from my hand. The hidden item, the secret of the 1,000-year-old zine, nullifies the mermaid's temptation. Heli's temptation, which was nothing but a curse, didn't work on me. That's what I thought as I released my holy power. What the hell is this size for real? The holy power I had released before was only twice the size of my palm at best. But now my holy power erased Heli's upper body. In other words, warning, you have killed Heli's, the 66th child of the Demon King. The Demon King may notice your existence. I killed Heli's in one shot. I'm insane. This is the administrator's buff. But this buff, it said it increased my power by 10 times. That means if I increase my power by 10 times, I can send the Demon King's children to hell in one shot. The problem is, when will I ever get that strong? I sighed with disappointment and turned around. Then I saw Silo's despairing face. Ah no, he Helis. Seeing him, I realized that the people's memories really changed. Then Zarkel's memory must have changed too. His face came to my mind again and I shivered. He would still be hard to deal with even with the administrator's buff. Is there anyone who can beat Zarkel right now? I thought hard and came to a conclusion. Tertius, Troy, and Chester are still too weak. I need to get stronger as soon as possible. I clenched and unclenched my fist lightly and went back to my companions. As I approached Zane, Troy, and Arhin, their eyes were fixed on me. They looked at me blankly, and then Zane slowly opened his mouth. Master, what was that power just now? Leader, how did you defeat a high-level monster in one blow? Amazing, Leviathan. Zane started the conversation and Troy and Arhin joined in. I felt embarrassed by their words and scratched my neck. It was just luck. I had no way to explain it, and it was partly true anyway. They seemed to accept my answer without much fuss. Maybe they didn't want to question it too much since we had already taken care of the enemy. But I'm sure that mermaid was trying to seduce you, Master. Zane touched his chin and looked at me. I was shocked to see you fall for that monster. Do you think I would fall for that? Well, you have a more beautiful face than anyone else, even in the mirror. I was speechless at Zane's words, but I couldn't deny them either. Then Troy, who had been listening quietly, reached out his hand to me. I was worried that you might get caught by the mermaid leader. I noticed that his hand had long and sharp claws. Hey, me too. Zane also showed off his bow to me. Thanks, guys. They were good guys. They bickered sometimes, but they were reliable. You did well, kid. Suddenly I heard Cairo's voice, but his voice sounded weaker than usual. What was wrong with him, or rather, when did this start? Kairos, when did you come? A little while ago. Kairos usually sounded cheerful, but he was strangely different now. Is something wrong? Did something happen at the Temple of Roval? I asked with concern, and I heard him sigh faintly. No, I was just a little surprised, that's all. Kairos didn't say anything more. I didn't press him further either. By the way, did Kairos know about the administrator, But the administrator was the one who controlled the system itself, so even Kairos, who was set as a god, wouldn't know, right? How dare you, how dare you? At that moment, Silos, who was struggling in the binding circle I made, shouted, How dare you kill Helis? Silos glared at me and yelled. I could see the anger and confusion in his trembling eyes. She was a child of Mazine. How could a mere human like you? Ha ha, this guy was really bad at reading the situation. If I killed the child of Mazine, whom he valued so much, shouldn't he be afraid of me? Before I could say a word, thwack, shut up. Troy slapped Silos's neck. That must have hurt. Silos's body went limp. I was glad he wasn't dead. I patted Troy's shoulder as a sign of praise and walked over to Arhin. She looked at me with a serious face and said, "Thank you, Leviathan. Don't mention it. You have such a great power, you must be confident. I feel embarrassed that I didn't trust you." "What are you talking about? It's all thanks to Kairos." I shrugged and exaggeratedly praised him. I wanted Kairos, who seemed to be in a bad mood, to hear it. But there was no answer from Kairos. What was wrong with him? I was a little worried about his unusual attitude. Or maybe he went back to the temple. If something had happened at the temple, Kairos or the kids would have told me, so it should be fine. Anyway, we've dealt with the child of Mazine and Silos, but the job's not done yet. There was more to do. Right, we have to save the people. There are still monsters left. Arhin said with a determined look. I nodded at her and changed into a new robe. How many robes have I ruined today? I sighed softly as I put on the new robe, and Troy spoke up. "Leader, what about this?" Troy pointed at Silos, who was unconscious. "That's up to the princess." I looked at Arhin and added, "I'll leave the disposal of this guy to you, princess. Is that okay?" "Fine. I'll take care of him properly. For now, let's leave him here and move on." Silos was in a coma, and he was bound by the circle I made, so he couldn't move even if he woke up. So we left him in a corner of the hall and left the palace. "How many villas are there in the palace?" I asked when we had left the palace Arhin. She thought for a moment and answered, 3. "Then we should look around before we leave the palace. There might be some survivors left." "Right, that would be a good idea." Arhin agreed and scanned the area. Then she saw a sword that the soldiers had dropped. She quickly grabbed it. "Princess, do you know how to use a sword?" Troy asked her casually as he watched her action. She nodded. "Yes, I learned swordsmanship when I was young." "Kiek." Before she finished her answer, a monster jumped out from somewhere and came at her. She moved her body lightly and slashed the monster's neck. She said she learned it when she was young, but she still drew a clean and neat line of metal. I was too out of it to think of using a sword until now. It's been a long time, too. Arhin shook off the monster's blood from the sword. "I have to move now, and I want to save the people." Arhin's words made my lips curl slightly. That's right. Arhin was always like that. Arhin Bahano's combat skills were not bad. She had the ability to handle low-level monsters, so her wielding a sword in this situation meant a power boost. I expected that from Arhin. She was locked in the tower by Silos because she couldn't disobey her father's orders. I thought as I swung my mace. Following Arhin's directions, we headed to another villa. Our group killed the soldiers and servants who had turned into monsters. "Princess." Sierra, a maid who was running away from the villa, called out to Arhin. Arhin turned her head at the unexpected voice and saw the maid. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "Sierra, are you okay?" "Princess, are you all right?" People suddenly turned into monsters. Sob. "It's okay, I'm fine." Arhin hugged the startled Sierra and comforted her. She briefly explained to me, Zane, and Troy who were with her. "This girl was my maid until I was locked in the West Tower. I can't believe she's alive. I'm so glad." Arhin gently stroked Sierra's back. "Sierra, don't worry, come with us." Sob. "Yes, thank you, princess." Arhin sent Sierra behind her as if she would endure any threat first. Is this also part of her royal sense? I was impressed by her detailed character without realizing it. Then Arhin's eyes turned to him. "Thank you, Leviathan. I wouldn't have thought of looking around the villa if it weren't for you. Don't mention it." I smiled a businesslike smile and swung my mace. Monsters vanished from my fingertips. I only said that because I already knew there were survivors in the villa. Our group found about 50 survivors as we searched the villa and killed the monsters that threatened them. After we finished cleaning up the palace, our group and the survivors gathered at the castle. For now, these people should stay in the palace. It's the safest place in Bahano right now. Right. And we should also bring in the survivors from the village. Is that okay? Of course. The survival of the people is the priority. Arhin gladly accepted my suggestion. In any country, the people were the foundation. The royal family was the one who supported and protected them. She could easily give up the palace that was nothing but a shell. "Then let's go." As soon as I finished my words, we left the palace. Some of the survivors wanted to follow us, but most of them were wounded soldiers, so Arhin refused their request. "Master, don't get hurt. Worry about yourself." Zane smirked at me as we left the palace. Troy came up next to me. "Leader, call me if you need me." "Okay." Arhin also clenched her sword. "Thank you for being with me." With her words, the four of us left the palace. The scene that unfolded before us was horrific. People running away from low-level monsters, corpses, blood puddles, and monster fluids scattered all over the streets. We thwack. The first one to start was Zane. His arrow, filled with holy power, pierced through a monster's head. Troy and Arhin also ran towards the monsters. Pot. I too increased my speed and released holy power at every monster I saw. Kung. My holy power collapsed a wall. My eyes widened slightly. I need to control my firepower better. I was barely able to control his power because the administrator's buff was still active. So I only released holy power at the monsters that were far away and swung my mace at the ones that were close. Thwack, thud, kiek. There seemed to be more monsters than I expected. The estimated number in the game was close to 5,000. The 5,000 he saw in letters and the 5,000 he felt with his eyes were different. I bit my lips and moved my body. There were quite a few survivors in Bahano who couldn't escape the city. No matter how much Arhin and Zane had evacuated them, the time was short and it was impossible to evacuate many people at once. Thwack. I killed a monster and took a breath. Ha ha. I had killed about 30 monsters that I could see. Yet there were still monsters roaming around the streets. That means there were a lot of people who were addicted to happy. The only good thing was that there were fewer corpses on the street than I expected, and most of the monsters are low level too. I snapped my neck and moved on. I looked around and saw Zane shooting arrows from the roof of a building. Near him, Troy was killing monsters with his claws. Arhin was also saving survivors and cutting down monsters. They all looked fine for now, but it will be tough if those things come over. I turned my head and looked at the center of Bahano's square. At the end of my sight, 3 mid-level monsters appeared. I have to kill as many intermediate monsters as possible while the buff lasts. I moved quickly towards the center of the square. There, I saw 3 intermediate monsters cornering about 10 people. Boom! I adjusted my direction and released my holy power. Then the heads of two monsters vanished at the same time. Swoosh, as the two intermediate monsters turned into ashes, the survivors' pupils widened. Then I flew and smashed the remaining monster with my mace. I killed 3 intermediate monsters in one breath and moved on without a pause. There were more intermediate monsters on the main street of the square. The survivors stared blankly at my back. How is this possible? Who is that guy? Their eyes on me were like looking at a hero. Meanwhile, Arhin entered an alley where 5 low-level monsters were swarming under Zane's cover. Swoosh, thud. Zane's arrow pierced through the head of one monster, and Arhin flew and slashed the 4 low-level monsters with her sword. Her movements were flawless. Even though she had not held a sword for years, her talent was still shining brightly. Why are you here? Are you hurt anywhere? Arhin approached the survivors who were trembling at the end of the alley. They looked like a family and they shed tears when they saw Arhin. Yo, Your Highness, thank you. Wah, Daddy. Arhin felt a sting in her nose as she saw the couple hug their 2 children, but now was not the time to be sentimental. As long as you're not injured, it's fine. Hurry and evacuate to the royal palace. There are no monsters there, so you can go safely. Ah, okay. Thank you, Your Highness. As the survivors headed to the royal palace, Arhin ran towards her next target. Ah! Another scream rang out. When Arhin turned her gaze, the monster that was attacking the survivor was already taken care of by Zane. And on the other side, Troy, who had transformed into a black panther, was tearing apart the monsters. If it weren't for them, Bahano might have been doomed. Arhin thanked them in her mind and held her sword more firmly, while I was fighting another intermediate monster. Grrr. Troy bit the monster that was charging at him. As he cleared the way, he saw a huge intermediate monster waiting for them at the end of the road. It was twice the size of a low-level monster. Save us. Mommy. The intermediate monster had a middle-aged woman and a child in each of its hands. Crack. The giant black panther slashed the air at a fast speed. As a strong wind blew, the panther's large paw hit the head of the intermediate monster. Splash! Troy's attack made the intermediate monster disappear. Then, the bodies of the people who were held by the monster fell to the ground. The scream continued, but their bodies landed safely on the black fur. Mommy. The woman hugged her son and looked around. The black panther that saved them also caught them. Thank you. She didn't know if he could understand her, but she thanked him anyway. I don't know who your owner is, but... She thought that such a smart beast must have been raised by someone very well. A low voice came to her ears. I am a follower of the Kairos Church. The woman was startled. I'm sorry. You're a beastman. Thank you for saving us. There's no need to thank me or be afraid of me. I'm just following the will of Lord Kairos. The Black Panther, Troy, spoke casually, but the woman and her son felt differently. The prejudice against beastmen that was ingrained in their heads disappeared, and the name Kairos was engraved in their minds. A village adjacent to the capital Bahano. The black mist could not cross the capital, but the monsters were transforming at the border of the capital. What's this? They were mercilessly slaughtering the monsters. The crimson whip cut off the monsters' throats without mercy. A man from Bana had a smile that reached his ears as he ran around and dealt with the monsters. His purple hair fluttered behind him as he sped up. Die, you ugly things. Khalid swung his whip wildly and made the monsters vanish. His body and face were splattered with the monster's fluids, but Khalid was smiling brightly. Tertius turned his head quietly as he watched Khalid, who was engulfed in madness. He saw the royal palace of Bahano in his sight. Even though it was a village adjacent to the capital, the huge palace that stood out in the middle was visible at a glance. I definitely felt a strong magic from the palace. Tertius felt that filthy energy. It must have been one of the children of Mazine, but that energy disappeared in an instant, and it was by a warm power. That power was definitely Leviathan's. That meant Leviathan had done something. He said he would do missionary work. Tertius' lips curled up slightly. He didn't need the flute in the first place. The sun's rays pierced my head. It was late autumn when winter was approaching, but sweat poured down like rain. Splash! I wiped the sweat on my forehead and smashed the last intermediate monster with my mace. It seems like this is the end of the magic I felt from the capital. As soon as I thought that, a message appeared. Subquest Light of Hope 9. Salvation of the Kingdom of Bahano cleared. Subquest rewards will be delivered to your inventory. The quest did not continue any further. That meant that I had finally completed the Light of Hope quest. Ha! I read and reread the message as I breathed heavily. I had finally saved Bahano. Ah, damn, that was so hard. It took a long time to get from Roval to Aldone. And from Aldone to Bahano, I had to fight non-stop. I felt relieved as I thought that the month-long battle with the monsters was finally over. It's a good thing that the black mist didn't spread any further from the capital. Thanks to the measure of putting mandrake roots in the monsterization device, the situation didn't get worse. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes for a moment. It was really damn hard. Honestly, it was more mentally exhausting than physically. I had barely slept since I rescued Arhin, so that might have been the reason. My mind broke when I met Zarkle, but somehow I managed to finish the quest. I exhaled and moved my body. My destination was the royal palace where everyone was waiting for me. Now let's see the rewards. I opened my inventory to check the rewards for my hard work. Then I saw 2 items that looked golden. And one of them had a familiar shape. It was just a bit more luxurious in color than the one I knew. I checked the information right away. Large-scale purification zone of the Kingdom of Bahano grade. Mythical item description. It can purify the entire Kingdom of Bahano when used. Ah, really? So they didn't give me this when I broke Mazine's blessing, but they gave it to me here. I felt a bit angry, as if I was played by the system. But I was glad that I had the purification zone now. Even if I had finished dealing with the monsters of Bahano, there must have been some survivors who were addicted to happy. And the next one was, what is this? The shape that I saw through the inventory slot was an arch-shaped door, and inside it there was something that looked like a blue black hole. Based on my countless game experiences, that is, this looked like some kind of portal. No way. They would give me a portal as a quest reward. As I thought that and checked the item information, my mouth opened wide without me knowing. Movement portal grade. Mythical item description. It can be installed in a desired place and move between the installed places. However, only the owner of the portal and the people designated by the owner can use it. That's crazy. Wait a minute. Is there something wrong with my eyes? I rubbed my eyes just in case. But the letters still said that it was really a portal. That's impossible. A real portal. Then, if I install this portal in Bahano and also in Roval, I can go back and forth between those ridiculous distances. This is really amazing, and the number of portals was not one, 5 of them. I felt my heart beating fast with joy. I can move easily now like the kids. I can reduce the time it takes to travel between kingdoms. And if I can make only the people I want to move, Zane and Troy can also use the portal. Wow, this is really awesome. Mr. Administrator, I don't know if you're listening, but thank you. Really. I thanked him sincerely, even though the chances of him hearing me were low. A portal has appeared. I couldn't contain my joy and smiled brightly. As I was doing that, I arrived near the royal palace. But the front of the palace was very crowded. Why are they all gathered here? There were survivors in front of the palace. I saw some of the people I had saved, so it seemed right. I didn't see any of the people who were injured by the monsters, so there must have been a separate place for the wounded. But still, there were a lot of people for a capital of a kingdom, and thanks to the quick response, they all seemed to have only minor injuries. I don't know how many wounded there are, but this is better than the original situation. By the way, the population density in front of the palace was high. I couldn't see them all at a glance, and the survivors were packed around the palace. How many people are there? More than 10,000. I gave up counting with my eyes and walked towards the crowd. As I stood at the back, I saw the person at the front. It was Arhin who was standing on the podium. She was talking to the people from a higher position than them. But why are they so quiet? The people were silent, so it seemed that Arhin had been talking before I arrived. She must have explained what happened today. Arhin looked at the survivors once and spoke calmly. The Rises Church, which has been tormenting us, has disappeared from Bahano as of today. Arhin's voice was filled with power. It was loud enough for me to hear from the back. We, the descendants of the great Bahano, have finally overcome the darkness. Even though she was wearing a tattered robe stained with blood and monster fluids, Arhin was more dignified than anyone. We must not forget the sacrifices of many people until this moment. But we must not stop either. We must move forward towards the light. We are Bahano. I clapped without realizing it. Then the applause spread among the people, and soon everyone cheered for her. No matter how dirty and worn her clothes were, Arhin was the king herself.